2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Paige, could you help us with the roll call?
David Larson.
Present.
John Meyer.
Present.
Douglas Benschoter.
Present.
Stephanie Garner.
Present.
David Huser.
Present.
Kate Payne. Kathy
This is
Olson.
present stuff.
Here.
All right. Thank you. All right, so we'll begin with the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. I ask for a motion.
So moved. Second.
All right, the motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, that motion passes. All right, so seeing we have a few people in the audience tonight, we're going to open a public hearing here in a moment. If you do have something to say, I would ask that you come to the microphone, state your name, address, any comments that you have, address the entire commission, not one individual person, and then we'll go through and we'll do it separately for these two items on our agenda, and then we'll discuss as a commission and do the motions kind of as after we close the public hearing. So just kind of how I wanted to start that. So with that, I will open the public hearing for item 1, which is the rezoning application of 725, 729 2nd Avenue Northeast.
Do you want me to do the background?
Yeah, if you would just go through the agenda memo for us.
Yep, Bo Buchholz is the managing member that has applied to rezone from an R1 to the R2. Right now, the R1 only allows single-family detached units. It no longer even allows duplexes in that zoning district. This property is a duplex, so it is non-conforming. He would possibly like to turn it into single-family attached at a later date. He'd like to have that option.
Come ahead.
Only if you want to, you don't have to.
Yeah, a little more background.
Sure.
So I'm Bo Buchholz. I'm the managing member of the entity that owns the duplex. So it is existing non-conforming duplex right now in R1. We are looking to maybe separate that into 2 single-family dwellings, which is why we want the R2. As far as existing zoning, it's an oddity to not be an R2 right now. I would argue across the street is R2, the whole neighborhood down there is R2. I think there's a duplex to the east of the property, there's multifamily across the way, duplexes down the road, so I think it would fit to make it an R2 zone. I think probably the other factor too is just the traffic right there on 8th Street. That's a main thoroughfare all the way through. So I think that's our logic and reasoning to make R2 a more appropriate zone for it. Do you guys have any questions for me on anything? Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So,
Part of the staff memo, I'll chime in with it earlier, we
Yep.
did confirm as, with Lindsay Kaler of how it was built as to allow it to be a single family attached units. And Bo has worked with Public Works, allowing them to have the 2 separate services. So that's been confirmed with staff as well.
okay. All right. So anyone else here to speak on that? If not, I'll close the public hearing for that one, and then we'll have a commission discussion, if any.
Well, the only question I had is that we've got a duplex right next door. I guess it would be pretty hard to rezone that one without them requesting that, but it certainly would make sense to have both of those and turn them into conforming uses rather than have them non-conforming uses like they are now. But I guess I was going to ask if that is even possible unless they request.
With the rezonings we've been having, there's been several, like the R3 ones we had last month, excuse me. I've been wondering on several areas of town, do we try to look at contacting all of these members to maybe get the groups of like zonings to the correct zoning districts?
Yeah.
We can't do it without their approval, but if city wanted to initiate that, we could possibly reach out to them. And others in the area, I mean, that whole area could probably be an R2, because you can still have single families in the R2.
Yeah.
And I think
it just makes sense.
I think it comes down a little bit, so one of the questions I had was, so any feedback from the notice to neighbors?
No,
Okay.
no public comments.
Okay. Maybe you said that in engineering. So the other thing is, I think, if you are an R1, that's probably less restrictive than an R2 if you are a single family. potentially, right? So,
Yeah,
and a lot of these, I think they kind of just got blanketed
Yeah.
into a zoning district, right? I mean, just kind of, they were residential, and then this block ended up being R1, regardless what was in it, is kind of what I've seen.
Yeah, and the districts used to be broader with their uses. They used to
I see.
allow more in each district than what. they
Okay,
allow.
maybe that's more of it, so. Okay. Anything else? Anyone?
David, is there a gentleman, do you have anything? you-
No, that's
he's for the
Fred.
next item.
He's the next
Oh,
one.
the next item,
Yeah.
okay, sorry.
No, that's okay, Fred.
We're gonna
Finish
We're
this
gonna
one
finish this
first.
one first.
Thank you.
And so there is, the only other thing I would say, just so that we do have, that's on the other one, my
That's
fault.
the other
Never
one.
mind.
Yep.
All right, so
Didn't mean to interpret.
if there's any other discussion, if not, I would ask for a motion on this from the commission.
Okay, I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the rezoning of 725, 729 Second Avenue from R1 to R2.
Second.
All right, the motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, that motion passes. All right, so, next item under the public hearing section is for reviewing the rezoning application of Parcel I, currently part of Parcel 0533-0017, et cetera. So I will open the public hearing for that, and please approach.
Okay, I'm Frederick Crumley. I own the parcel of land to the west of the city maintenance, and we want to rezone it for commercial or something, light industrial.
Yes? All right. Do you have any questions for us?
No?
So the-
Any questions for me?
I'm dying of curiosity who the car maintenance person is, but anyway, we don't need to know, we don't need to know that, but just curious.
So this one is related to the Plat of Survey later, so I
Right.
guess if there are questions, possibly we can kind of just tie them all together, because you do have two items on our agenda tonight, so.
So this rezoning is only for that proposed parcel,
From A1 to M1, correct?
yeah, for only that parcel I believe it's about 3 acres.
Yep.
Yes.
It's only for that small section for the
Yes.
auto service center, the rest will remain the ag.
Right, and it's the parcel right next to the city services.
Yep.
And it also is adjoining one that we rezoned some time ago for a prospective coal ready mix. I mean, on the northwest corner of that parcel has been rezoned to the industrial as well, so.
That was a complete different area of the farm.
Yes, but it's
North of it.
right next door. Right.
Okay,
And I think I read when I was reading the documents earlier, so what's, to go to M1 for the use as a
Auto service center,
auto service, that's what it was, thank you.
What does that mean?
a car service place.
like
Not a
repair.
gas station?
No.
Not a gas station?
A repair station.
Okay.
So, any comments from notice to neighbors?
No comments were received.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so if you don't have any questions for that, I'll close the
No.
public hearing. And if we have a question for you, we'll reach out here just a second. So, closing that public hearing, any other internal comments here for the commission on the rezoning request?
I guess I think it's very appropriate. That's what's in our long-range use plan. It's kind of starting to surround the home, but that home was actually built by somebody that used the property for industrial uses too, but, I mean, way back when. And they carved out the house and now it's kind of isolated.
I had a couple minor questions on the Plat of Survey, so I'll kind of wait for that. It doesn't impact the rezoning request, so.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the rezoning of Parcel I currently part of Parcel ID from A1 Agriculture to M1 Light in Industrial District to City Council contingent on the approval of the Plat of Survey for Parcel I.
Second.
All right, the motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, that motion carries and is passed. Okay, moving to regular business. Now we're gonna take a look and review the Plat of Survey for Parcel I of that same Parcel ID. So, Paige, could you walk us through that agenda memo? I think
Yep,
it's pretty
so
simple.
as you can see, they're parceling off 3 acres there along the southeast section of the parcel for an auto service center. There is going to be a 33-foot utility and access easement along that west side of Parcel I to allow access for the remainder of that parcel. Or for potential development as one access point.
Okay, thank you. So, if anyone can answer the questions, I guess, so the one I had was drive access. Is that where the proposed drive would be?
It'll go off of that west side.
Okay. And from a traffic perspective and the city staff, everybody's aligned with that?
Yep, our development team has reviewed it
Perfect.
on various locations.
It's right across from the school, so.
Yeah, which is, you know, just a little further.
But it doesn't line up, you know.
Yeah, there's kind of some stagger there, and I didn't know if there was a recommended distance between,
Right.
based on speed of the road or any of that.
Yeah, we looked at it in relation to the public works facility as well as the school drive
Right.
location.
Good. So then, I think my only other question was, on the Plat of Survey, it doesn't really show anything other than the building itself. So was there any discussion or any idea of parking areas for this auto service center?
The majority
rear.
of it will be in the back. The back will have a fenced-in area for salvaged vehicles. The front will have a small parking lot for those coming in, but the majority will be on the rear.
Okay.
I guess it just as a general question, I mean, they will prepare, you know, a site plan for this commercial building. What is the current, and it's probably the same as it has been, could you kind of describe the process for site plan review and approval now with the city?
Yep, so we like to get a preliminary site plan to review it amongst our development team. It can come in as soon as they approve a building permit, however, we like to see it ahead of time, just so it can review through our development team, and then we'll send it to Bolton and Mink so they can look at drainage and things like that on the property.
So, so M1 is what we rezone this as, and I was trying to kind of scour the code for like salvage versus storage versus any other sort of thing.
Yep, so it's not a true salvage yard. It's a place where vehicles would get dropped off to be serviced for your oil changes, your tire rotations, things like that. It is a towing service as well, so a wrecked vehicle may
Right.
come for a day or two until
Right.
it can get taken to its final location.
Sure.
So it's not a true salvage yard where they're
Right.
gonna come stay forever.
Yeah, it's more of the, you gotta have a certain amount of space if you run a wrecking service, right? For your-
Right.
I wanna say impound, but whatever, secure storage, right?
Holding area.
Yeah, correct. Okay. And that seems to fit M1 fairly well. Good. That's all the questions I had. Any other discussion?
Is there a reason why this doesn't go all the way north to the lot line there instead of making the L in there? Or how did they decide,
Where to stop?
here's what we, yeah, where to stop and here's what we need for this? storage
Because they
area.
didn't need that entire area. 3 acres was more than enough for them, and that allows the rest to still remain as farming ground. And then it leads to future development, another entity can eventually go back in that area.
So the area all around it is still remaining agricultural, it's just this strip that got rezoned to
Correct.
light industrial? Okay.
Well, we've rezoned quite a bit larger area than this. I mean,
Well,
that's,
Actually, that was my
That's a separate
question.
parcel.
right, I understand.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
and that's
so
what,
that other parcel was rezoned, or it remains agriculture?
A different parcel, the parcel kitty corner to the
Oh,
northwest.
right, yeah, that was previously, but I mean, just in this action today, all we're doing is we're basically taking off this piece and making it light industrial, but all around it remains
no,
agriculture.
Exactly.
Well,
You got
Kitty
it.
corner.
that's, you rezoned a larger area, and then you're carving out this piece of that rezoned area. I mean, if you look at the aerial of the rezoning,
But I think that
What about the current rezone?
the rezoning is contingent on the approval of the plat survey. So we only rezoned this new
John.
parcel I.
I mean, that's still ag, right?
well, but
So parcel D.
the part that we
for example,
rezoned has got the house carve out in front of it, and that's what this lot is down in the bottom right-hand corner, I believe, isn't it?
Right.
So the rezoning includes the land behind that and also behind this parcel I, correct?
No, the motion for it is just the proposed parcel I.
That's all, it said parcel I.
Okay,
In
then
the
I
rezone.
guess I'm confused about the aerial map of the
Yeah, because the aerial map had the whole area.
rezoning had the whole area.
Right, and I don't think that's accurate. I think it's
Okay.
just parcel I that's being rezoned.
Correct, just parcel I. I can change that for when it goes to.
Okay, well, I just-
Yeah, you thought the whole group,
Because-
I did, yeah.
Because what the parcel I is
Yeah.
is a piece
Yeah.
Yeah.
down there next to the house,
Yeah.
Yes.
and so.
But if you look at the previous,
I think
like,
it was
motion-
done that way because you have to click on, it's all one parcel still.
Okay, well,
Because it hasn't
I'm
been
I'm
divided
glad
yet.
I asked that
Yeah.
question,
Thank
because,
you.
I guess my impression, and actually, I wouldn't have had a problem rezoning the larger parcel than carving out I of that total rezoning. I mean, that's not to me, that's not a problem,
Correct.
but,
But yeah, they just wanted that 3 acres rezoned.
okay.
Yeah, so maybe we could redline the
I can do
area.
that for council.
Yeah, I think that would be
Just so it's-
a very good idea, because, yeah, I mean, just because we rezoned it doesn't mean he can't, I mean, even if it's M1, you can still farm it, that's what he's doing with that coal
well, I mean,
ready-mix piece.
and the question is, do they want to pay another, fee to file the next rezoning? I mean, they have to, every time they parcel something off in the rezoner, I mean, it's another fee every time, so, I don't know, it might make more sense to them to do it all at once, but,
I would imagine the next time it would be the remainder of the chunk. But yeah, they specifically asked for that 3 acres.
I
this
mean,
time.
logically, that's why we've got that easement along there, so,
They
you
can
can
do more,
access
yes.
the rest of the parcel.
but, I mean, it may go to commercial or something else in there, who knows? but-
Okay.
Is there a different mill rate for M1 versus agricultural for taxation?
I don't know.
I believe
I
that's
believe so.
based upon actual use.
Okay.
When you start building on it, all of a sudden,
All of a sudden it changes.
well, it's an evaluation, what's the value? It's not a mill rate, it's what's the value? Maybe the value goes up when it becomes industrial.
But I
The mill
think-
rate's the mill rate for the county or whatever they assess it at, and then it's the valuation. of
There's the
what's
valuation,
value.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the intent. the
There's not
use.
different mill rates, I don't think.
Oh,
Yes,
but-
it's not different
I mean,
numbers,
they-
but there is I want to call it the rollback, I don't think it's the right word, but, the valuation where you're taxed on a certain percentage of the value. And that percentage depends on the zoning.
Yeah.
Okay, now I understand.
Okay. Any other questions? Very good discussion on this topic, so. Hearing no others, I would ask for a motion.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the Plat of Survey for Parcel I located within the larger parcel ID in Waverly to the city council.
Second.
Okay, motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, that motion passes as well. All right, so now we're moving on to our special provisional use ordinance change proposals. Do you want to run us through that agenda, Paige?
Yeah, I sure can. So we've discussed this a couple different times, how there's been some inconsistencies on special provisional use mentioned in each zoning district versus what was mentioned at 100.29 or that special permit when code section. At one of our meetings, we thought it would be best to probably keep that special section separate and list out all the special provisional uses, and then just clean up each of the zoning districts so it doesn't mention everything again. So that is what the attempt here has been. We tried to kind of clear some of them up, separating out things like religious institutions, hospitals having their own section. One others you'll notice is I did add funeral homes, mortuaries, and crematoriums into there because those were not mentioned in any of the sections as a permitted use. The only time a funeral home was mentioned was a parking requirement. So I thought we needed to get it into our code section somewhere, and discussion among staff, we felt it was probably best to do a special permit or for those, especially when the current one, Kaiser Corson we have, is in a residentially zoned district. So we didn't want to bring them out of compliance. We thought they probably had a special provisional use at some point.
Danae, do you have any questions for the,
I do not have any questions.
okay, funeral home? I know that, I didn't know if you,
No, just, they have been in discussions about possibly doing an addition or something with their building. And so that kind of brought up this, I'm like, that's perfect timing because we're looking at them. So I just let her know that we're looking at adding it into special provisional uses tonight, so she could come and
If
see
this
what
is
we.
approved, we'll look at expanding our building and our business, if it is approved, and then come back with a special provisional use application with more details.
Good.
How would you like to go through these, Mr. Chair?
Well,
I have four little things that I want, that I
right.
have in different sections, but
so yeah, I put some notes together in advance, kind of shared. I certainly would welcome a discussion on that if there is further discussion. And just so everyone knows kind of what they were. One of those items has been addressed and it is a new revision to the agenda. It was the M2, was it? I forget now.
M2, yeah.
So yeah, somehow that slipped through, I think. So anyway, so that is done and off my list. To answer your question, I think almost the best way is maybe case by case. Note by note here a little bit. I think we can knock through them fairly quickly.
so I guess one question before we start.
Yep.
So is there anything that you can think of that we haven't addressed, or if something comes up in the future, then we have to turn around and add this to the, I mean, I don't know
Right.
if there's anything out, I didn't go out and look at other cities or anything, or things that are in special provisional use, but is there anything that we need to add that we don't have it, that
I
is in
think
here?
we've hit a lot of the major ones. A lot of our code sections right now read, these are the permitted uses or a similar business. So if it's something that's really similar to a business we already have in town, we can put it in with that zoning code district
Without coming
to us for a code change.
Okay.
So these special provisional uses are more of, hey, even if this might fit here or whatnot, we want it to be in several zoning districts. From what I see on others, were similar.
I mean, I couldn't think of anything, but you're dealing with it day to day, and so I didn't know if there was something that isn't addressed here in the community that could come, and then we'd have to add it, you know, and I'm just trying to think, okay, let's keep from having to have a meeting to cover somebody that's, you know, that you can automatically, you know, take care of without.
Well, so my global question is kind of around that. Again, I wanted to discuss it with this team and not just kind of dump it in a note, but, so I understand permitted uses. Some sections have provisional uses, but not all. And then we kind of get into the special provisional use. You know, it kind of feels like a lot of these would be provisional uses, you know, if it's something we can identify, right? Something that we know of, something that fits that zone. Doesn't that make sense to be a provisional use versus a special provisional use, which to me may make more sense to be something we don't know, right? Like an unusual use for the space, right? That does require the review. So fundamentally, I was just trying to understand that. And again, from the mindset to get it so that it's maintenance friendly, you know, from change friendly, I guess. So I didn't know if there was a history there. Just kind of reading through some of the sections, I wasn't clear on that.
So if somebody converts some building to a church, you can automatically deal with that without ever coming to the P and Z that if it's in the, depending on where it's at. I'm just trying to think of something that could.
I'm not sure we want to do that. I think those kind of uses should be reviewed by the commission, and they should be reviewed by Board of Adjustment to get a couple extra sets of eyes on them, rather than having staff being the one that has to make those decisions.
Well, you're the one that, you're going down to what I just was.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Yeah, that's my concern, that, you know, that you don't have to put that on your shoulders.
and that's why the difference between a provisional use, which is very narrow, and staff is making that decision, as opposed to a special provisional, which goes to the bigger picture.
I think, as I'm looking through these, provisional uses are things such as a single-family attached. Yep, we want to allow it in this district, but you need to have your covenants, you need to have those in place first. Your child care homes or your in-home daycare centers, your home occupations. So I think those are probably things that are less traffic impact too, that might not impact the whole area as much as a special provisional use may. So certain ones, your schools and your churches probably always want to be a special provisional use because those do have a large impact on others. Hospitals, I don't know that we'll get another hospital coming in, but same with that one. The general, that was the one I kind of leaned back and forth. Does that need to be in a special provisional use, or is that kind of permitted in other districts? I guess I can see what you guys prefer, but.
I know they've always come to P and Z in the past, you know, just to do exactly what you're saying, and so that was my concern. Are we going down here, a road here that we don't want, shouldn't be going down, instead of having that come to us and having, like you say, a set of, or a couple set of eyes on it?
Well, and that's why these are special provisional uses. They all have to come back to the Commission Board of Adjustment. So it's, you know.
So they will have to.
They will have to.
Yeah.
But I thought when she said earlier is that if it's similar to what we're doing here, so that's why I'm confused just a little bit.
So I guess that is the question, and religious institutions, the schools, I was like, did I leave schools off? Those two I think would always have to come back because they truly don't probably fit close to any zoning district definition that we have. The one I had questions on is more like the government facility. So if we want to build another city hall in another C2 location, say along 4th Street or something, would we be required to come to this commission and Board of Adjustment? Or does that fit enough in with the C2 designation that we wouldn't have to? Because that's how I worded it in those, that says the following uses shall be subject to requirements of special provisional uses.
Well, but there are other governmental uses. For
Right.
instance, I see some well pump houses that stick out like sore thumbs in neighborhoods. Well, I worked in communities, they wanted a well pump house to look like a residential home. So it fit the neighborhood. you know, and I see
And so that I see.
those kinds of things can happen too, you know. I mean, to me for instance, the one that's just north of the middle school there on whatever that is, 15th, whatever. I mean, it sticks out like a sore thumb. I think it ought to look like a house. It's right across the street from R1 residential, you know? So, I mean, I think that government uses, it's not just building a new city hall. There are
Right,
other
exactly.
things.
Oh, you got the USDA,
Yep.
Yeah,
you know, that's out
yeah.
by Spawn and Rose, you know, that sits right there across from
So
residential, so.
So the way it's written now, oh, I guess I'm not on C2.
How about an in-home
Let me get the C2.
preschool?
I'm sorry.
An in-home preschool.
Well, there's thresholds with that, aren't there?
Well, in-home daycare centers are specifically that they don't have to have that's a provisional use, so as long as they
Okay.
meet state guidelines and stuff. A preschool, I would say, is still a school, so you would have to. Um,
But it's covered here as a special.
Right.
Yep, because it would be a school.
It isn't. Okay. So, back to the C1. Government, you said C1 for your government example? City?
Or like a C2, like a city hall. We're in a C2 right now, so would it fit in with the normal permitted uses of a C2?
Well,
Rather than.
Since C2 means anything in C1 counts.
That's true.
And then we've struck the public and government buildings from special provisional use, but we do have it under regular special provisional use.
We took it out so it wasn't in both
Duplicate.
places,
Yep,
yes.
yep, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Which kind of does open us up for missing something, I think in a certain way, right?
All of the zoning code sections now under special provisional uses reference this section
Right.
100.2 and 09 to
Yep.
make sure you go back there. and
Yeah,
look.
which I think is good. I think that's very
And
good.
if they're not, if they end that use, then they automatically revert back to what they were before, correct?
Say that again, Laura. If
If-
they end that use?
If they end that use, say like a charitable, yeah, it would be, if they end that use and it reverts back automatically, it doesn't have to come through, yeah, okay.
And so it's based on the usage, not the ownership?
That was gonna be my next question, is it based on the usage? So if a church left and a new church came in, would they have to get a new special provisional use?
I wouldn't think so.
The use should
I mean,
transpire.
it's like assigning zoning, I would believe, you know.
I think we had
If
that.
you sell a gas station, you don't have to get another permit for crying out loud, you know.
But didn't that special provisional use directly to the organization that is in there? I think we had this come up one time.
We did.
Is it?
Years ago that because it changed, I think it was if I don't remember, I think it was a church that, it was a different church and we made them go through and
Do it again.
do it again. But
Really?
I'm trying to remember which one.
I would just think that would complicate the real estate transaction potentially, right?
Right.
Well, that had to be subject, it was was subject
Sale
to,
contingent upon
Yeah.
the new special provisional use.
I'm trying to remember, you know, shit, I can't remember everything. It was.
No,
Was it the old Big Bear? Was it, what's that, Riverwood now? No.
That used to be network control out there.
But I think it was an
Not
office,
where-
it was before it was
It
a
was
church,
an office.
it was a commercial office, or a-
Yeah, but after it was Big Bear, I thought there was a church in there, and then it went to an office
There
building.
was a church, yeah.
Okay.
did it?
I don't remember, but they didn't go directly from a church to a church, so that didn't, I don't remember. It's been too long. There's another one too.
So I guess, is that something that we should add to that section then? or at least to the application or something, is it contingent upon ownership change or use change?
Well, using the funeral home as an example, if they would sell it to someone else, does that mean they would have to go through it as a special provisional use process again? I don't understand why.
I think that would be hard to make people do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not saying, I just remember we had.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, we had one that we required them to, and I don't remember why.
I mean, the use is assigned to the land, not to the owner,
Right.
in my mind.
Right.
But I might be wrong. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think, I would tend to agree, right? If the use is approved for the land, or building, or the structure, whatever it is,
The property.
unless that significantly changes, right,
Right.
that usage, not the ownership, but the usage changes, then I think, what, and whether or not we have to add something or not.
Well, and that's kind of, I mean, if they change it more than 25% in area or whatever, it has to go through the process again. I mean, that's the way it's written now.
So I'm just trying to play devil's advocate in my mind for a minute. Let's say you have a, I don't know, grocery store, I don't know, and you want to make it into a different kind of retail store.
Five and dime or something.
But that's,
It should be fine.
yeah,
'Cause
but
you're
that's,
meeting the
that's not an
use.
SPU, so commercial zoning is not,
Sure. SPUs are special.
I mean, they're this definite list.
So the two schools just sold. If a school came in and wanted to do a new school in West Cedar, and they would have gotten the bid, would they have had to come back? Or was that use tied to the use?
I would
So,
say,
for example, with the LDS church, that got turned into a childcare.
Right. Good
That
point.
came back for a new special provisional use, I assume.
Yep,
Yes,
the
it
use
did.
changed.
Right, because the use changed.
Yeah.
But yeah, the ownership change and the use not changing, I would say no, it wouldn't have to come back, but
So by the same token, if the Latter-day Saints Church had wanted to sell to Vineyard, it probably would have not changed then, would it?
right,
Right.
that's my thought process.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, I think that's the way I would like to see it anyway. Okay.
Is what we're talking about written anywhere?
It's not, so I can add that in to like a number 5 or something. like
Yeah,
that.
that would be some clarification that the special provisional use goes with the land, not ownership necessarily.
Some place that you can go back and say, here it is.
Yeah, so we don't
Versus
have to have
having
this
the
discussion.
conversation.
Again
Yeah,
and again
sure.
and again.
no, I think, in general, I think I like the way the code is going, to condense it to the special provisional use section, to reference the special provisional use under the other ones. I have a better understanding now of permitted uses versus special provisional uses, which I can agree with here. So when I read through, really, and this, I won't say it's my last question, but the comment I was struggling with a little bit, and Paige answered it a bit, but I want to bring it up because again, it was one of my comments here, but. So if you read about the special provisional use process, in many of these sections, it requires the 250-foot notice to neighbors, that sort of thing. It actually doesn't say that in the special provisional use section.
No, it
Well,
does.
she changed it
I
now,
added
too.
it.
She
Did
changed
you
it.
It did before, it's in the red line version. I added that in.
It's in the clean version, isn't it?
It's in the-
It
in the
shall
version
include
that there is
publishing
now.
notice in
It's
the
in
local
the-
newspaper,
Your
owners
version.
within Adjournment.
It's in the new version, not the old.
This is the latest and greatest. It's in-
So I read that and I was gonna call you, but then I didn't understand.
Yeah,
It's in
I
there now.
edited
It
it
is,
for you.
yeah. Okay, so I like that, that's done. I think that's much more clear, the quick read I had. My fault.
So, I mean,
So I am,
we had good comments and she
I like
took
the,
care of quite a few of them.
So you guys talk amongst yourselves for a minute. I just gotta catch up to myself.
So I guess my other thing that I want you guys to look at is we have all of these in that 100.2 and .09. In each individual section, there might still be a couple of them mentioned that we only want to allow in that potential district. Did those look okay? Do you think any of those need to be moved over, or?
Well, trying to look at my,
I thought it was okay. My comment was, I think kind of, let's fix that.
kind of alluding to that, if you go to this, to the one for C1, neighborhood commercial, and you look at 2C that's in there, it says, and if you look at the clean version, it's page 52 of 58, anyway. It says, other uses that are consistent by type of use, use intensity, physical characteristics, style, size, and purpose with the permitted uses and special provision uses listed above. How are you going to interpret that?
That was in there previously, and
I
that's
know,
kind
it's
of
always
what
been in there, and it just,
I think the reason, well, yeah, that's under special provisional use. I understand why it's under D, because it's hard to really list out all of those kinds of businesses. So I get it being under the actual uses. For your professional offices, you're not gonna list out every single one. But yeah, special provisional uses, I suppose that could be taken out.
I mean, it gets down to kind of what Mr. Huser is saying. You know, that's a pretty good judgment for a staff person to make, oh yeah, that's a permitted or that's a special provisional. I always am kind of bothered when they say things other, you know, that are consistent by type and, you know, that,
So you want it struck from item 1 or item 2?
Just take 2C out.
I think 2C ought to
2C should be
be
removed,
just kind of taken away. I mean,
But doesn't 1D make it more the staff decision?
well, and that's, yeah, I mean, that's the whole problem.
I know.
is 1D and 2C, where does a use fall if it's kind of an other that isn't an exact match?
So I would have expected you to say to strike 1D because
Well-
that takes it away from the staff.
So,
Deciding,
I will say,
right?
I can go back and edit uses. I didn't want to touch any actual permitted uses with this code change. I wanted to focus on just special provisional
sure.
uses on this one. Because otherwise, we're open a whole nother section.
Yeah, no,
Well, my thought was to take both of them out, and if we find that we need to come back and address it later, to add something in there. But it's better if we take both of them out and then turn around and see how things go. If we find that it's creating issues, then we come back and do it. But I think it puts a lot on your back, as I said earlier, and I just think it's easier to strike both of them, and then if we find that maybe there's something that you think we could cover it without being so ambiguous, might be better. I don't know,
Because
that's just.
A, B, and C are pretty broad. They are, they encompass a lot. The only reason I didn't touch it is, like I mentioned, I'm focusing on that number 2, not number 1. I didn't touch any permitted uses in any of these zoning districts yet. I can remove that one, I just didn't want to go in depth to all of them.
I just wanted just to really think through that.
yeah, I mean, I think you're better to keep the vagueness in the special provisional use versus the permitted use.
Right. I mean, it's easy for her to say something, well, that's another use, that needs to go to P and Z and Board of Adjustment. I mean, rather than having them say, well, yeah, I think it fits that one up there, and, you know.
So, should I take out 1D and 2C, or leave 2C?
You know,
I might lean toward Mr. Huser.
that's why I was looking at taking them both out and
One
then.
opinion.
That's what I wrote down, I
And
just
see
wanted to-
if, you know, if it becomes an issue, then we address it again, you know, later, but otherwise, it gives you too much latitude that somebody can argue, and we don't need you to get into it. There's some people that can be pretty strong-willed, and you have to deal with those, and I'm trying to take some of that away from you having to deal with that, so.
I'll take those both out, not a problem. With this code section, I'm glad we came to this one. 2B, clubs, do I take that out because we have number D listed under 100.21, the special provisional use that talks about and clubs?
I think you can ask that question in a couple of sections.
That's what I was just wondering, is it, do I still have
There's some,
extras in there?
there's,
Okay.
I'm not saying there's a lot, there's a couple, but I thought,
And
what was said is if it's in that section, it's, well, that was more under permitted uses, then it only fits in that section.
well, so there's certain ones, like if you look in the industrial, those are only gonna be special provisional uses for that section specific.
Correct.
That's not gonna be in all the others. But clubs, do we wanna allow them to be in almost any zoning district? Because I think we have it in any, so I think I missed that part.
Yeah.
Give me an example.
I need to get to the new sheet.
Well, I would think of the Mason's Lodge that's on Third Street Southeast.
That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say it because I'm a mason, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's
Or
an
the Veterans
example.
Post.
Or the, yeah,
Veterans Post, yeah.
yeah.
probably.
Waverly
Yeah.
Veterans Post.
And so to me, that would have been a special provisional use under the new 100.2109. So I don't know that it needs to be specifically in this C1.
Yeah.
Because we have clubs referenced.
Where is that referenced? What letter?
D, 1D. It talks about the frat purposes, institutions of philanthropic, charitable character, and clubs. Maybe it's different enough that it would fit in the and clubs.
But it is covered under 2B.
But do we want, would that have been allowed in other zoning districts rather than just the C2? I'm just wondering, I'm being redundant there.
Because, I mean, that's the question that kind of gets into it, right? Like, if somebody comes in with a R2 and wants to put a club, right, that becomes a special provisional use because it's defined that way. So it seems very redundant to have it as a special provisional use in a section where
Yeah, well,
it could be, then why isn't it just a permitted use in that section?
I think I just missed out.
So I think,
and there, in the, there's a similar thing, if you look at the U1, environmentally sensitive, it has number 2, special provisional use, any use erected or maintained by a public agency.
It's pretty vague.
Well, I mean, that's the same as in 12109, government facility.
That's what I was questioning that. Is that works of art too? Would government facility, I didn't know if a facility versus a use erected are two separate things.
Oh, I see.
That's what kind of went through my mind, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Because it's like a work of art,
I
it's not
think
a
that's a good
facility.
point. A public art piece would not fit into, yeah, yeah,
Maybe we can make it clearer, but that's what I,
I guess I could buy that. Yeah. Okay.
okay, so we've gone over quite a few.
I said, do we want to start with A1 and just go down to see if there's any? Or are we just randomly going through?
Well, we jumped around a bit.
I still want to go back to C1. I have
Sure.
another question on that one. I left in date childcare facilities. Should that be put in 100.21 instead and taken out of C1? So I'm trying to think of our childcare facility we have by the library, that's a C2.
Well, I notice childcare is also listed under,
As a permitted use in C2.
yeah, I was gonna say A1,
Oh, in A1.
so it's a special provisional use.
Oh, yeah, so would we want that more broad to be in any of them rather than, I mean, they for sure won't be allowed in industrial because those don't allow it, but, or just keep it as what we have it.
So your question is whether you put childcare facility as a special provisional use in any zone.
Correct.
I guess I don't have a problem with that. I don't know how the rest of people feel. think I would lean more toward that, because
That's what I'm thinking.
all of a sudden, it's, you know, someone turns their home into a childcare and has got 25 kids there, and the traffic that could be involved. And, you know, I think it would should take another step of review.
Or, well, it's close to, I don't know, we just said a U1, you can't, yeah.
Yeah, there's gonna be restrictions in like U1 that regardless, you can't, M1 you can't, M2 you can't. But, I mean, I don't think that means you have to list them individually. There's other things that are in the special provisional use you can't do in U1 too.
So ultimately, what we're saying from a format level is if there's a section of special SPUs in a zoning section, those are only allowed in that zoning section. For example, ag has a lot of weird ones, for example, right? That we wouldn't necessarily want to put on the bucket list of any zone.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's fine.
There are a lot of references in these things like recreational field or parks or whatever. And where do things like pickleball courts fall?
To me, that'd be recreational field.
That's a recreational field?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So if you take that, I mean, that's just kind of an interesting one, because there are a lot of people who complain about pickleball courts in residential areas because of the noise. So
So that would be a special provisional use.
it would be.
It would be,
Yes.
it's not a permitted.
Right.
But yeah, should it be recreational field and parks as a special provisional use in the bucket rather than individual ones? That's-
So, you're good on that? Okay. R2, 3A is boarding houses, is only in R2.
Isn't it in any residential?
It's only shown, I think, in R2 as a special provisional.
Oh.
So you know, if you look at R1, R2, and then R3 and R4, there really are no special provisional uses. But that one just stuck
So
out
that
there.
boarding house, yeah.
And a boarding house is what?
Well, like your,
Well,
Like the
does a B&B become a boarding house?
So I guess that was the next question is, do we just remove boarding house? Because is that your Airbnbs that by state code, we're not able to restrict to certain zoning districts? We have to allow.
I mean, a boarding house is a
residential.
motel, basically. I mean, it's.
Yeah, when the
you get out
veterans-
into Nebraska, there's a lot of boarding houses in those communities, because some of those people, old ranchers, live an hour or more away from the school, and so they come in, they build these boarding houses so that the kids can stay there, go to school, and then the parents come back and get them on Friday night, bring them in on Sunday night or Monday morning, and those
How
are,
many units are typically in a boarding house? Is it usually like a multi-family structure?
some of those out there are 20 units, you know, and-
It's almost like a dorm at that point.
yes, yes.
More than a boarding house.
Yeah,
should
but
it
it's,
be-
but it's, they call them boarding houses in
Sure.
those communities, but
So should those be in R2, R3, and R4, or just R3 and R4?
well, you're seeing boarding houses coming in for workers for farms now. I mean, there's one over in Butler County,
Really?
and so some of these large farms, they can't get help, and so they bring in, or they build these large boarding houses for the workers that come in during the harvest and planting seasons, so we could see something like that, you know, instead of putting them out on the farm, they could be put in the community too, so I mean, I don't know, but I mean, it's- so they're,
So maybe they should be listed on A1 through R4.
Could be.
And why-
I mean, I don't know, you'd think they'd want to be on these large farms, but we're gonna see more large farms, and we're gonna see boarding houses, I think, because they have trouble getting help, just like a lot of different businesses, so I don't know, I mean, we could have to deal with that sometime in the future. Especially if Fred's family decides they need one out there. I don't know, I mean, it's just something, so I think you need to be, thinking of that, I don't think we'll need one for, school children, but I think there's something that.
I don't know, I mean, I think you could argue to add it to
The bucket list?
the bucket list, because, a lot of those, not all of those can be in any district anyway.
Correct.
Right? Because you don't put a hospital in a industrial,
Correct.
even though it's a special provisional. So I think it makes sense to put boarding house, then you can at least talk about it based on where it's gonna go. and
So then you can
make make
remove it
sense.
from the
R2.
R2.
R2, yeah. You're right.
So how is a boarding house different than a hotel motel?
I think boarding house is a kind of a vintage term.
Well, I know it is. I mean, there used to be some boarding houses.
Hotel with a
Right.
long-term
Well, so
stay.
I think the way it's being described, at least by Mr. Huser here, is that it's not for payment, right? That
Yeah,
it's
no, it
it's
is.
a combination that's done by the landowner or by the,
Well, I mean, there were boarding houses in Waverly where the owner lived in 3 rooms downstairs and the rest of the bedrooms were rented out.
That's exactly right. That's a boarding house.
That's the way they were.
is that a rental?
Yeah, I mean, you paid a monthly rent to rent a room.
You're renting.
You might have shared a bathroom with 3 other rooms and, that kind of thing. I can think of where 2 of them were.
I believe there's still some in Waverly.
What's that?
I believe there are still boarding houses in Waverly.
I think there are too.
Really?
Well, I know Ron Johnson, who's one of the professors at Wartburg, he says he lives in a boarding house over by Cary Elementary, somewhere in that vicinity.
Oh, that brown one?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe it's the brown one.
When there used to be one on 12th Street.
That's what I would think they are now more than, like, I would think a boarding house doesn't have its own,
Cooking facilities.
right, and possibly control of heating and cooling and these sort of things, right? Because
My
My
it's-
grandmother used to rent.
Like a hotel does, right?
Yeah, but, and the room might have a hot plate, and that's,
Well, yeah,
now it would be a microwave.
So
Same as a
Dave, what would
dormitory.
happen if somebody said, hey, I've got this house over by Wartburg and I'm gonna
Rent out rooms.
rent out 4 rooms.
That would just be like a rental program.
We gotta have a
We
parking
gotta
off
run
the
a
street.
registration.
But if it's an R1 or R2 or 3,
You can rent it out in any residential zoning district per bedroom, as long as you register it with us.
They gotta have
Do we
the
have
parking
any-
off street too.
You gotta, yeah,
And
you've got the
parking.
checklist of things you have to meet.
Do we have
Right.
any limits of how many unrelated people can live in,
Yeah.
like Cedar Falls?
Essentially, if the bedrooms are big enough, you have number of bedrooms plus 1.
Yeah, you're counting headboard space.
And that's 18 and over. It
so
doesn't-
are we all getting caught up over the word boarding house?
I think so.
Yeah, maybe we don't.
So I used to say, get rid of it
I
or
think
Yeah.
it would be struck.
put it in the bucket list.
This boarding house over in Butler County, they have a full-time chef that, in the dining area where the workers eat their lunches. And
So are those workers for one farm or for multiple?
Nope, one farm.
Okay, for like maybe the dairy setup?
No, it's just a row crop operation.
Okay.
But
So
I
yeah, I think we just remove it. They're treated as a rental property in any residential district. If they want to go into a commercial zone, then I suppose it would be treated as your hotels or your motel.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it never happened to Waverly, but I had an experience in a community that had a closed school. A guy bought it, and he was within 10 miles of Muscatine, where all the melons and all that stuff is. And he turned that old school into a dormitory, and he served 2 meals a day. He served breakfast and supper. He had a kitchen that packed lunches, and he had like 300 people living in that old school.
And were they migrant type?
Yes. You know, they were there for 3 or 4 months a year and gone.
And so would we, if they did that in one of our schools, would we just make them rezone to an R4 multifamily?
I would think so. I don't know.
That would be my assumption based on our code, what we would require them to do.
Right, that falls under uses, right? It's
Yeah,
like how
yeah,
you're
permitted
using it.
uses.
Right.
Check Hampton to see what they have for that, because they got that situation over there in Hampton.
For like boarding houses
Well,
or school or.
well, places where there's multiple members that stay in a facility, so, just like what you're talking about,
Yeah.
they stick a ton of people in one house, you know.
Yeah. Okay, so on to C1, I want to come back to C1 because I wasn't redlining my notes here very well.
Yeah.
So under special provisional use under C1, did we strike A, B, and C and say that goes to the bucket list?
Yes.
Okay,
C just removed completely, but A
Yep.
and B bucket list.
bucket
yeah.
list, okay. Thank you. And I think C2, those make,
We're not changing anything in there, we're just adding that additional ones can be found in that code section.
yep, and then U, I was good, and M2, I'm good. Okay, so this is my last comment on this section that I want.
No, they're good, you've had good.
Was just related to formatting. I did notice some like line spacing was kind of weird, and I'm sure that was kind of a challenge.
Yeah.
So the agenda versus the final code,
Well-
that's something that needs addressed, I feel.
This was taken directly from how the code is currently spaced and all of that. I am putting it through like this because Carla is working on a codification of the entire code. So she'll eventually get to zoning, she'll fix all the spacing, all the format, make sure it's consistent with the rest of the code.
Okay.
Good.
Because I noticed like some of the headings kind of
Yeah.
get goofy if they don't have all the sections, and so I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, and I noticed in the R3 and R4,
Yeah.
you, looking at the clean version, you have a 1, and then the special provisional use is stuck over on the side. You know, to me, that ought to be number 2.
It is, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, the head, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's a,
So non-existent headers need to be put in there.
I mean,
Yeah,
it would still work this way, but it's just kind of a formatting.
Yeah, no, I like it.
I didn't list all those, so I think it's good.
Are you cool?
I'm good. So, is everybody else good?
So is this gonna come back to P and Z one more time before it goes to city council?
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. I'm gonna make all the changes. I will email it out to you guys. Let me know. We don't have to have a discussion through email. Just let me know if I missed anything that was discussed at tonight's meeting so that I can have it for the July P and Z meeting that hopefully will recommend an action for council.
Super.
All right, so
Hard
we're
work,
gonna,
Thank you. Yes,
It is-
thank you.
Yeah,
so we're gonna table this item
for next month.
for next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or we don't use term table. Postpone it until the July. Because table, then you have to technically bring it off the table before you make the motion. So let's just say we'll postpone it until.
We are going to postpone any discussion of boarding houses and hotels.
Sorry I brought that up.
Well, I believe
What about if we just delay
you set the date when we're going to talk about it next.
So we'll need to postpone it to the actual date.
Delay consideration. So we are going to postpone delay consideration of the special provisional use to July.
We need to determine which date in July.
That's next.
Okay, but we need it.
So you can say postpone to the July meeting date, yeah, that's fine.
To the July meeting date, we are postponing. All right. Moving to staff updates. July meeting date.
So as I said in the email to you guys with this agenda, July's normally scheduled meeting would be July 4th. However, with it being the holiday, we will not meet that date. So
Why?
what date?
Why not?
I knew
I
that was coming.
mean, we can.
It'll be all the fireworks going off in the background, it'll be distracting.
When
We'll
is
be
this
done before
room
dark.
available?
I've got that scheduled. It's available often. So before, after, the next week after.
So if you just go to the 11th, is it available?
It's available on the 11th.
It
A
is?
week later?
I know Brian was unable to be at that meeting, but if everybody else is decorum, you can watch it later. We'll catch you up on that. Or do others have conflicts with that date or? I don't want to move it to Friday the 5th. Wednesday the 3rd, people might already start traveling for the holiday.
So,
Otherwise, I know Thursdays are the concerts in Coleman, so if we want to look at Tuesday the 2nd or that next Wednesday, it's.
Yeah, I might be gone on the 11th myself.
Okay.
I might as well.
So let's go away from the 11th.
I might be gone that, most of that week.
So what about, I mean, are people available Tuesday nights? What about Tuesday the 2nd?
I would be a yes on Tuesday the 2nd.
Works for me.
Gonna mess up my golf game.
Tuesday.
It's gonna rain.
What time is your golf?
Pardon?
What time is your golf?
5:30.
Oh, yeah.
Not gonna work.
But I'm in
If
the
you're
social
really
league where
fast.
we'd really rather drink and eat, so.
So we got 2,
Tuesday the 2nd at
7,
I can
7's
make
fine
it
for
that.
me.
that's
good
3,
for me.
that's 4. Trying to say we
Kathy,
can
do you
be,
think it would
I think
work?
that works for
Okay.
me.
that's fine,
So
so,
should we,
and I'm sure Kate can be there. Okay,
So we're doing that at 7?
We do it on the 2nd?
July 2nd at 7 PM
yep,
Okay.
here in this room?
here, I'll reserve it, it's open.
Excellent.
I mean, it is kind of weird, just in the sense that people may be taking extended
Vacays.
vacays during that holiday period, but if we get to that point and we can't get a quorum, we'll have to change it again.
Well,
Well.
don't we have a quorum already?
I was
Yeah,
kind
we should have a
Well,
quorum.
the sooner we set the date, the easier it is for people to make the date.
That's right.
That's
I
Put
agree.
it on the calendar.
probably
Right.
true, but I won't guarantee then I will.
Yeah, I mean, people certainly have the right to
I'll go to
like,
provisional
make,
in a
make,
second.
make changes, but it,
Yeah.
the longer you put off setting the actual date, the more likely it is that someone will
Yeah.
schedule something then.
Yeah.
No, and I know that the website said that date, was tentative anyway, or subject to change or whatever, so we knew we had to do